Shaun, you're on mute.
You told me to mute. Sorry, everybody. Let's start again. Hello and welcome to everyone. Welcome to the News 24 subscribers. Welcome to those who are coming in as guests and watching this on YouTube and channels like that. We gather from all over the world. It's really great to have you with us. You will see on your screens, those of you who are subscribers, that you'll be able to ask questions, and we look forward to your questions to Erika, to me, whatever you want to ask. We'll pass them on, and we'll go into a question session after about 20 minutes that we've been chatting. So I want to welcome in particular Erika Bornman, who is the author of this book, which we're going to be talking about. I won't give a great deal of background at this point because I really want to just ask Erika, this picture of you on the front of the book, which is quite a remarkable picture. When was that picture taken? Take us back to that moment of when that picture was taken. And then sort of talk us a little bit on from there.
So that picture, I was around 8 years old, and it was my last school picture taken at Worcester, the Laer Meisie School in Worcester, just before my parents moved us across the country to Escort in what was then just Natal, so that we could be closer to KwaSizabantu mission. So my amazing friend, Sean Robertson, I asked Penguin if he could please design my cover. And when we chatted, I said to him, I want to bring the innocence of the child across with the malice of the mission. And I think he really did such an incredible job on the cover. Yeah.
That's lovely. So that's just before you moved to the mission.
Yeah.
And to the mission that in the title of your book, you're calling Mission of Malice. I think having read the book, I think I might have searched for a stronger word to characterize what read to me like a really horrendous experience of being there for basically living there for how many years were you there altogether? 13 or 14 years, I think you were.
Yeah, my association with them lasted for about 13 years. I didn't live there every single year, but for much of it, most of it, 13 years. Yeah.
Right. So from age 8, basically, you were living at the mission.
No, age 8, we were living in Escort. And then when I was 9, 10 years old, my parents went to France to learn French. And then they abandoned us there. They thought they were leaving us in good hands, but they weren't.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they went to study French so that they could become missionaries in Francophone countries. Yeah. They left you and your sister there. And your brother, and describe to us a little bit about what sort of those circumstances were, within the mission, where you were staying, where you were living, and you were going to a lot of church services and that kind of thing, right?
Yeah. So actually, what had happened was there were a lot of Joburg children, all white, who their parents felt that they didn't want them in the normal school, at school. I don't know why, but they were boarding at KwaSizabantu basically, and then every morning would get on an old rickety bus and drive the 50 kilometers to Stanger, where they went to school in Stanger, and then in the afternoons come back. Right. And so there was a girls' dormitory and a boys' dormitory, and I was barely 10 years old, but because of the circumstances, I ended up being with all the high school girls, which was actually quite horrible because there weren't any girls my age who were in that situation. They were all high school. My brother was in standard 5. I was in standard 3. And that first night after my parents left, I wet my bed, and then I would kind of carry on wetting my bed for a long time until my parents came back. It was really horrible. There was nobody to love us. Nobody took any interest in me. Nobody checked that I was doing my homework. Nobody checked that I was eating. I was just like this lost little soul, but I had to go to every service because there my absence would have been noted. Yeah.
Right. So even though you'd sort of been left there and there was this lack of care and lack of attention and so forth, you were at the same time getting, as it were, the whole sort of onslaught of basically the ideology of this religious group. I mean, you were being indoctrinated, and you were being, from your descriptions in the book, you were getting a lot of stuff about how you were sinful, about how the devil was in you, and that you basically needed to sort of be disciplined in a way into some form of godliness, or into whatever they required of you. And that, for me, in your story, is a very moving part of the story, because that assault on a child's mind, even on the sort of personality of the child, on this developing person, that basically you're not getting what you need, really, from your family, from your educational system, from the people around you, even from your religious leaders. Instead, you're getting this barrage about how you're sinful and you're going to go to hell, and so many rules and so many things that you've got to do and you can't do. If you do it wrong, you're going to be punished. There's a lot of punishment, hell of a lot of punishment going on. I mean, you write about that I think for the white people there, it was not so severe. For the black people there, punishment was very severe.
Yes. Look, some of the white children, and that was before I got there, they call it the Kranskop debacle, where they were basically taken away from their parents and taken to this farm in Kranskop. This was right when KwaSizabantu started. So I don't write about it because I wasn't there.
Right. So it must have been early 70s, right?
Yeah. They were beaten. They were locked up in cupboards. They were, because somebody had seen a vision that, they had Satan in their lives, and there are people who are the generation before me, like they're older than me, and they still cannot talk about what happened to them. Alo Stegen, who is the very charismatic leader of the mission, who now has dementia and sadly probably isn't watching. But hello, everyone else from KwaSizabantu who's watching, because they will be lurking. He would preach that you have to break the spirit of a child by the age of 3. Think about that for a moment.
It's dreadful. I mean, almost the belief that, almost like sort of Catholic belief in original sin, that you're just born sinful. I mean, you're just born like this dirty devil creature. And you have to be so thankful. Before every beating, you have to pray. And after every beating, you have to thank the person who has just beaten you, because they are helping save you and making sure that you're going to heaven. Yeah. So, I mean, it's probably worth filling in viewers who are not aware of this, that the KwaSizabantu mission is basically, it was founded in the early 70s by Erika Bornman and his brothers. And it's a big farm, really. And it's one of several farms that are owned by the mission. But the KwaSizabantu itself is really an enormous farm that required a lot of manpower, woman power and child power, essentially, to work this farm. I mean, it is today, a R1 billion business.
Yeah.
Akele water, lots of fresh fruit and vegetables and stuff that's going out to, all the leading supermarkets in South Africa. So it's actually like massive commercial enterprise that required this almost sort of slave labor to run it, making these enormous profits. And at the center of it, this cult really built around Erika, to sort of keep people in line, And, I mean, the stories that you've told and the testimony that you give in your book that comes from other people who in many ways had bad experiences there. It's quite eye-opening. And, since then, and since you began to make your revelations, and since the Exodus documentary and so forth, a lot more people all around the world have essentially come out to say, something like this happened to us too. It's not a lie. I mean, the mission would like us to believe that this is all a lie, and that basically, anyone who survived it and left and went to go and have a life somewhere else, is presumably inspired by the devil or whatever.
Okay.
But I mean, there are hundreds of people. There are hundreds of people who have these stories to tell, including the blog that you sent me today. That was a really heartbreaking story. Someone called Jay Roderick talking about how years and years later in life, left the mission many, many years ago, but still carries this, still feels a deep sense of kind of emptiness, that something is missing, because the growing up of the child and the learning to interact with the world and to be a person in the world was essentially denied to you, which is a to my mind, I mean, absolutely horrific thing, that those people to have their, basically to have your childhood tortured out of you is a really horrible thing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you, I mean, the stories that you tell, and different people that I think very bravely, like yourself, came forward and told stories. Your story in this book is very much, I think, not only the sort of story of the terrible things that happened at the mission and this terrible sort of psychological abuse that people were subjected to, but also your getting away and your, as it was called in the documentary, the exodus, the leaving, the escape, and yet that goes on for many, many years.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people think that once you escape, I'm going to call it a cult. Many people prefer calling it a very restrictive religious group, but it's a cult. I think people think that escaping is the hardest thing, but it is hard, but that's not the hardest thing. Because, for example, we grew up without a TV, without magazines, without radios, without we weren't allowed to talk to boys. I mean, they are so, forgive me, I want to say befuck about boys and girls not speaking to each other and not knowing anything, that they actually either cut out or glue together the sections of biology textbooks in the school that spoke about reproduction of any kind. So we kept in complete ignorance of everything. You're not allowed to talk to boys. But of course, you're allowed to talk to men because they're going to abuse you. But anyway, we'll get to that. So when you're out in the world, I remember, and literally, my entire body would shake with fear. Every night, as I relived the day in my head, I didn't know how to speak. I didn't know how to act. I didn't know how to dress. I didn't know, and I knew I was different, and I wanted to belong, but I didn't know how to belong. And you have to, the whole time at the back of my head is, I'm bad, I'm evil, and now I'm going to hell, because Ella would tell us, if you see the light and you leave the light, your hell is 7 times hotter than everyone else's. So they would preach about people who left and the evil that befell them, and they were struck by lightning, or, terrible things happened. I mean, the first time I went to buy a pair of jeans, I describe it in the book, I put it on, but I was so scared of this lightning bolt coming from heaven to strike me down because I'm wearing a pair of jeans, that I was kind of trying to walk under all the awnings on the sidewalk. So it's an incredibly I found it an incredibly hard assimilation into this life that I really wanted to belong to, but that I felt a complete imposter, and I thought that everybody could see that I didn't belong. I think in a way I'm lucky that I'm very outgoing and I've always been very bubbly. And my dad called me die familie se kerkproppie because he said, you push me under and I always pop back up.
Yeah.
So my character helped me, I think, in assimilating into the world. But even so, I found it unbelievably hard. I cannot imagine. And I had it fairly easy. If I had been a Black child at KwaSizabantu, I would have been beaten to an inch of my life. I was white. I escaped most of the really horrific things that happened. What happened to me was horrific enough, but it wasn't nearly as bad as what happened to the Black children. I cannot imagine. And that's part of why I'm speaking out and why I'm saying this, because they have not renounced their belief that you have to break the spirit of a child. They call us disgruntled people. I'm disgruntled. My mother preached from the pulpit that I am a bitter child and that I'm spouting lies because I'm bitter. Oh man, like I'm not bitter. I'm just hurtful. Yeah.
Sure. and the weirdness as well of so much in this sort of within the religion, so much obsession with sex, and as you say, the boys and the girls couldn't talk to each other. No information given, no education given, no, it was just all a mystery. But at the same time, you were in a position where, first of all, you could have been, in a way, put into an arranged marriage if one of the men had felt that God had you had three proposals, I mean, let's say, but three men who felt that God had basically told them that you were going to be their wife. Yeah. So there's that. And then there's also, even within this context of this enormous amount of sexual repression, that you were then being left alone with your counselor, which is a story that you tell in the book, and that you were basically vulnerable in that situation to being essentially abused.
Yes.
Sexually abused by your religious counselor.
Yes. So the mainstay of their doctrine, which biblical scholars, please weigh in. But as far as I know, there's no scriptural basis for this very, very, very strong tenet that they have, which is that you have to confess your sins, not only to God, but to a human being. Right? And it's these human beings who are the co-workers who have been deemed to be spiritually advanced enough that they can hear your sins. They have no training. They have no psychological training. They don't know how to deal with people. They just know how to you bad thing. But you have to confess your sins. It's not it would be nice if you confess your sins. You get beaten if you don't. Or threatened with expulsion as I was. But so many of these counseling sessions actually happen in the counselor's bedroom, or you're alone with this adult. You're a child, you're alone with an adult. Many girl children are counseled by males. You know nothing, but you're supposed to bare your soul. And this is a man of God. So what happened with me when this man of God started kissing me and fondling me, I felt something was wrong, but I knew that it wasn't this man of God. Whatever was wrong was me, So he had free reign to do with me what he wanted. And and they refused to acknowledge that their system not only condones and abuses and allows abuses, it fucking fosters them. Forgive my language. It fosters abuse. And they are blind to it. They will not acknowledge it. I'm disgruntled and bitter. Well, hello.
Yeah.
Stop counseling little girls.
Yes.
And little boys, because there was lots of abuse with boys as well. Yeah.
And you speak about in the book the recovery process coming out of that. One of the things was that you came out of it with a sort of sense of shame that had been embedded in you, not just from all this sort of, fear preaching and you're going to hell and so forth, and you're a, devil's child and so forth, but in the encounters with people like the counselor, you come out of that, as you say, you took the guilt. You were the one who had sinned in that situation.
And other people who were sexually abused as teenagers may recognize this, that my first experience of arousal was filled with shame. And then as an adult, I have to unravel shame from arousal. It's a completely messed up situation. And the thing is that they know these abusers walk among them and they don't do anything. Okay, so my abuser now sits in jail because he murdered someone and then he tried to kill his son. But that's an extreme example. So it's nice for them to say, yeah, but Muzi Kunene is this like exception.
Bad guy,
no, he is not. He's not an exception. Yeah, he's an exception in that he's like, but they foster people like that. They coddle them. They look after them. And you know what? The victims are told to repent and they're made to pray. And they then told, there was an 18-year-old girl. She was raped by this. Anyway. And she was told by Alois Degen, confess your sins. And then she was told, God has forgiven you. God forgave her for being raped.
Yeah.
I honestly, and the thing is because they show no remorse, they show no recognition that this is indeed the case, this is what has happened, it is still happening there. And Advocate Keith Mattia has a huge thing about me saying his words are, I say there are multiple ongoing rapes. And I say to him, what is it that I don't know that you are saying multiple ongoing rapes? Because I never said those words. Right. I just said that I know of rapists.
Happened to you, yeah.
Well, I know of people who have allegedly raped women and girls who are preaching there, who are teaching there, and who are still walking around there. That's what I know. And I'll be happy to say their names in court. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I won't do it now. Sorry, apologies. I'm getting very worked up, but
save that for the court.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I mean, it's a horrendous situation.
I'm not bitter. I'm just angry.
And I think you're right to be angry. And I think that the people who, I think that the people who are still trapped there should be angrier. I mean, it does amaze me that KwaSizabantu still exists in this form, and it continues. And it's been going for nearly 50 years now. Yeah. Over 50 years, and it's still there, and it's still making money, and it's still, preaching, essentially a kind of I don't know, it's sort of, Christianity of fear. I mean, it's all about fear. You've got to fear the sin within. You've got to fear the God who's going to punish you. You've got to fear the other. You've got to fear the world outside.
Yeah.
Outside. I mean, it's all, you're being manipulated by being made to feel afraid of so many things. And it's just fear.
And I have a question for the church leaders, the Christian leaders in South Africa. 20 years ago, a bunch of them got together, interviewed a whole lot of us, and wrote a report. That was 20 years ago. I want to know, why is there not more investigations? Why is there not more condemnation coming from the churches? Because if these people say they aren't Christians, and the other Christians, these people say they are Christians, and all the other Christians in South Africa are just sitting back like, what the hell, people? Why are you not saying, not in my name? What is it that people are so scared of religious leaders and religious institutions, that we are so scared to say, you are abusing people and you need to stop? Why is it hands off when it comes to a church and when it comes to a religious organization? I don't understand that.
An important question, yeah. Well, we've got a question from that's coming up, someone who's not giving their name, but the question flows on very well from what you've just been saying, which is, how has this experience changed your relationship with religion?
So I believe that it doesn't matter what you believe in. What matters is how you live your life, or how I live my life. Am I a good person? Do I strive to be good? How do I treat myself? How do I treat the world, animals, other people? To me, that's what's important. I am not religious, no. A lot of ex-KwaSizabantu people retain their Christianity, and that amazes me. And good for them. I had too many questions, and I know people are, and honestly, people have been saying for 30 years, they've been saying the God of KwaSizabantu is not the real God. Well, okay, but there's still too many questions. So no, I'm not religious. In my 20s, when someone said to me, I'm praying for you, I would go, please don't. Now, when someone says I'm praying for you, I'm like, thank you. Keep praying for me. I appreciate it. I love it. So I was in my 20s, I was probably a little bit more vehemently anti-religion. Now I am, everybody just do what it is that feels right for you and just be a good person. That's
cool. One of the other questions that come up, I think I know what the answer to this is, whether you have met Erlo Stegen since News 24 broke this first story about...
I think he's asking Arno Stegen. No. I have no interest in talking to him. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
That's a subject for another day.
Right. And we've got a question from Tokom Kwanazi Kaluva. Are you going to lay criminal charges against KwaSizabantu Mission?
So, if I can't, I'm going to take it all the way to the Constitutional Court, because there is such a thing as a limitation, as the statute of limitation, and also in order to lay a class action, there is a thing of, what do they call it? Prescription. The law has a thing called prescription, where you have to lay the charge within 2 years of it occurring. And I have a huge problem with that, because it took me 20 years to deal with the shit that they gave me. So how was I supposed to lay a charge within 2 years? In the first 2 years, I still believed they were right, you know. Right. So, Togo, watch the space. I'm not letting it go. Yeah.
Okay, we have got a comment from Enoch Kilo. It's talking about the court. A mention of a court gives me hope that this horrible situation has reached the hands of the law and is being dealt with. He says he can feel your pain. But, I mean, there are processes afoot now. I mean, the Council for Religious Affairs, the Human Rights Council, and I gather the KwaZulu-Natal provincial government are all looking into this. I mean, there are processes going on. They seem to be very slow. They seem to be quite slow. But KwaSizabantu is also very well defended. I mean, they have lawyers, major lawyers, who are presumably, going to sort of drag this out for as long as possible, in the same way as they commissioned a legal report and basically whitewashed them. They're deferring, they're putting it off and they're putting it off and they're putting it off. For as long as some small admissions have come out, right? Some small things that they've sort of said, okay, well, maybe that person did something wrong. But overall, I mean, they're pretty much defending themselves. They're defending their organization, and they're defending their billion-rand business.
And that's why they must be stopped. Because you know what? They had the opportunity to put their hands up and say, oh, my word, we did wrong. We are sorry. We will change. No. And that's why they must be stopped. because they refuse to acknowledge any wrongdoing. The CRL Rights Commission are looking into it. The Hawks are looking into the 160 million plus that they gave away. I mean, guys, you got to read up about this. I'm not going to talk about it now, but the reasons given for giving away millions of rands to some dude was that the Dutch Queen asked for it. It was like the most insane, and but anyway, no money laundering. Right. As for that report, well, I'm going to be writing about it, but you can read in my book what I think about it. And they actually made some claims in that report. They said that I told somebody to lie about being raped, and I take that quite seriously. So I've been focused on writing my book, but I'm going to take on people who enable this place as well, not just this place.
Yeah.
Not just me. There are other people. I'm just talking to me now.
I think it sounds like there are more and more people all the time who, I think a bit of something has sort of cracked, and people are coming out and saying and telling their stories and stuff. And you write about that in your book, other people who are beginning to tell their stories. Some people, obviously, who are not in a position to tell their stories or don't feel that they're able to come out or wage war against it or that kind of thing. But there is something happening.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think if I had children, I don't know that I would have written this book. I don't know that I would have wanted them to know all this about me. I think a lot of people carry the shame still. And I'm a huge believer that the person who experienced abuse decides what they do with their story. So if they want to go to the police, go to the police. If they don't want to go to the police, don't. If you want to speak about it, speak. If you don't want to speak about it, don't speak. So I am a big believer that everybody decides what they do. And not everybody, this might sound like very arrogant, but I kind of believe that I went through that because, I don't know, the universe or whoever is out there or me deciding what happens knew that one day I would be able to tell the story of what happens there. I believe it's my purpose in life. Yeah.
Yeah, great. No, I see there was another question we had fairly early on, in which Shirley Brooks says, thanks for writing the book, and wonders to what extent the setup in the 70s and 80s was facilitated by the context of apartheid.
Oh, Shirley, I'm not really the right person to answer this. In the beginning, I gather the apartheid government was very, very who are these multiracial people?
Yeah, because they were going as very multiracial in the beginning, right?
No, it's still multiracial. It's touted as this multiracial nirvana. But I'm going to get back to you, but just to quickly interject. So how they get married there is the man has a vision from God, or God speaks to him and says, marry that girl. And then or whoever comes to that girl and says, that man thinks God wants you to marry him, go and pray. And then you go and pray, and God never spoke to me. But anyway, maybe God speaks to you. But remember, you also think that men are the be all and end all. So as a woman, who are you to say no? You come back, you say yes. And then the day you get married is the first day you actually speak to each other in private or touch, right? But in 50 years, because God decides who marries who. God in 2 years changed his mind 3 times, by the way. So about me. So but because he doesn't speak to me, I can't ask him why.
When you were a problem case.
I was.
He was having trouble finding you a husband.
No, they wanted to find me a husband, so I would shut up, I think. But God, in 50 years, has never had or condoned or wanted an interracial marriage. In 50 years, never. In a society where people mingle freely, live among one another. And Elo used to say, Yeah, it's like I think the springbok and the gemsbok, two different antelope. The springbok doesn't marry and shag the gemsbok, They are deeply racist, but their God is supremely racist, because no black man has ever had a revelation that he needs to marry a white girl or any other configuration. So, so surely apartheid. So then something happened and they pivoted, and because of this confession. Okay, so this is all allegations. I don't have absolute knowledge of this. I know nothing of this, but this is what has come out: is that in their confessions, they would, if an ANC or a UDF cadre would repent, they would milk him for information, and they would pass that information on to the apartheid government. Apparently, some of those cadres disappeared. They were taken away by the apartheid security police, and there's something deeply, deeply rotten there, and nobody has wanted to investigate. And so now they're pivoting again. So they preached against Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko. They were like, this black consciousness spirit, it's like a demonic spirit that got into people. The Steve Biko demonic, they didn't say Steve Biko demonic, but the Steve Biko spirit. They actually, even as late as 2015, they preached about the Steve Biko black consciousness spirit as if it's a bad thing, right? But the ANC government now seemingly loves them. Like, can people just wake up? Wake up. Yeah, sorry.
Also
I'm raising my voice. I'm not shouting at you. I'm just like getting worked up.
That's fine. Because you do write about how the very anti-communist. I mean, a lot of what they were preaching and saying was very, it's like a sort of real right-wing Christians in the States, who just anti-communism is the devil. Communism, Satan, the world, same thing.
They called it liberation theology. They were absolutely against it. The World Council of Churches. I remember Bishop Tutu being decried from the pulpit. And like after I left, what an absolutely wonderful man. Nelson Mandela was the devil. But now, not so much. Now they're nicely forgetting. And they after the whole Exodus thing, they've been sweeping their selection of sermons clean. So they're deleting everything. Every time they realize something suspect, they quickly delete it. But we have receipts.
So there's actually quite a lot of their preaching and stuff available in a way. You could go and look. I think you said there was even footage of your mother preaching, because your mother is still at the mission preaching. And there's footage of that on YouTube and places like that. So if people wanted to get a flavor, they would be able to do so. They would be able to look and hear what the preaching is.
And watch the Exodus documentary, and also listen to the Exodus podcast, because the Exodus podcast, like, brilliantly, it's such an amazing audio
experience. I mean, it's a
Yeah, and Dion Wiggett and Nogdula Manyati, we've wove together my story with that of my friend Kalimpilo Malinga, and they bring in the history, and you'll hear Elo's voice as well. And I sent the first podcast to someone close to me, and he was like, "Whoa!" He didn't realize how triggered he would be just hearing Elo's voice again. It's enormously triggering. Yeah. Oh, someone says they've only got good memories of KwaSizabantu. I left straight after matric, and whatever I went into, it is a decision I made by myself. I regret nothing from spending time at the mission, and I only benefited academically, and I'm able to compete in the jungle of Gauteng. Anonymous attendee, I'm so happy for you. It would be interesting to know when you matriculated, because if you were there in the 1980s and the 1990s, then I am amazed that you say you only had a good time. But anyway, good for you.
Oh, look,
and you are definitely still part of KwaSizabantu. But, good for you. I'm glad you only had positive experiences. I told you they were here.
Yes.
I told you.
It would come up. I mean, you went through a particular experience which you describe in the book when you spoke on Afrikaans TV program called Voorblad. I mean, I can't remember now how many years ago it was, but it was quite a while ago.
2001.
And you were there. Your brother was there in the audience to support you, and the discussion was about the kind of revelations that you had made and your own story that you had told in relation to what happened at KwaSizabantu. And what flabbergasted me was that the mission was obviously asked to make a contribution or to answer to what was being said about them. They sent your mother.
Yeah. You see, they would like this to just be a disgruntled child who no longer gets on with her mother. They don't want to acknowledge that this is their doctrine that creates these fractured families. I would like to ask KwaSizabantu, your list of co-workers, who of them have intact families? Who of you still have all your children? Answer me that.
Right.
They fracture families. As a child, you're a commodity. And when you no longer ascribe to them and you're not going to be one of them and procreate prodigiously, you get discarded. And there is no love there. They don't know what love is. It's all doctrine.
Yeah, that sounds completely fascistic to me. I see that there's
anonymous attendees. Sorry,
a message from another anonymous person to say,
I matriculated from the school at KwaSizabantu in the mid-2000s. I can confirm everything Erika says. They were still doing it all. Baie dankie. Yes, thank you. Ngiyabonga. Yeah.
And that's like 20 years after you left, basically.
Well, 10 years. Yeah.
So I mean, there's every sign that that they have not in any way changed their behavior, that they have not moderated. I don't know.
Apparently they no longer beat children in public. So at least we got...
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
That's a Christian thing to do. Yeah. Beat them in private.
Beat them in private, yeah.
Yeah.
And they are. I've spoken to people who left as little as 2 years ago. Children are still getting there, yeah. Yeah.
So you've spoken to quite a number of people in one form or another. I mean, and through the website you mentioned in your book, and people who have come with their experiences and so forth. Did you have pushback? I mean, did you have people who got hold of you to not directly coming from the mission with their own propaganda, but people who had come out of it, and there was like the person who made a comment recently to say, hey, I had a great time. I'm a great person. I'm fine. And did you have those? Did you have a lot of that sort of comment from people? People got hold of you and said, you're nuts. You're lying.
You know how Jimmy Kimmel and them have celebrities read out nasty tweets that people write about them. Yeah. So I have to commend the News 24 team, because they took this on and they produced this incredible body of work called Exodus. And if you haven't watched it and read it and looked at it yet, it's award-winning and it's amazing. Where were we? So I was fully prepared. I thought I was going to get a barrage of negative comments, and I was fully prepared to collate them and to make a little video of me reading out all these things that people say. And that didn't happen. I was overwhelmed with support. There were one or two and people making really nasty comments, but when they appointed that PR person, that kind of went away. I think she told them that they're scoring own goals by attacking me and others on Twitter. So they kind of all went away. Someone popped up recently, and but anyway, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because the truth is on our side. You know, this is not embellishments. In fact, my book is mild. If you read my book and you think it's hectic, then wait until someone like Nontobeka Hlela, and I really hope she writes her book, someone who was not white writes their account of what they went through, and then you will go, wow, Erika, you had it so easy.
Yeah. I was interested, we were talking the other day, and you were talking about, I was interested by the fact that, you know, you had, and this is to talk about the book specifically, that you first wrote about your experiences there, I think in the late 90s. You wrote a little bit more in public, in Cosmo, you wrote something, other publications. I mean, small pieces, but that sort of begin to tell the story. So, you know, all these years pass, and basically then the process starts where you get involved with the News 24, you and News 24, the Exodus documentary, a series of 4 podcasts that tell the story in even more detail. And I would certainly urge anyone who's interested and anyone who's listening to listen to those, because there's a lot more information than simply what we're talking about here. Yes. You know, there's the allegations of money laundering and all sorts of things. So there's that. But you, as a person, went, you know, from that stage, beginning to tell your story in the late 90s, all the way through to Exodus, 4 podcasts, and then you write a book. And my thought was, wasn't there something like, but then you said to me, and I thought it was a profound thing, is that in a way, you'd actually been writing that book all along.
For 25 years.
Even before, you know.
I think it was in 1998 when Cosmopolitan published a letter that I wrote, a really long letter, and Cosmopolitan published it in its entirety, that I first thought, hey, maybe I can write. And that's when I first had the idea that one day I'm going to write my book, because in my 20s, especially, reading books that other survivors have written, whatever they survived, gave me so much hope. And I just wanted to write a book that would give other people hope. You didn't have to be at KwaSizabantu for it to give you hope, I hope. But if you had your power taken away as a child, or even not as a child, just, you know, I was brutally honest. Oh my God. I mean, I look at the book now and I think, oh my God, I wrote that. I can't believe I put that in there. I'm like, what were you thinking, Erika? But I just had to be completely honest. Yeah.
And I suppose, I mean, is that part of the process in a way, your recovery process, that is partly to do with getting over that shame that gets implanted in you, you know, when you're in that environment and you're in that sort of that situation that you say you came out of it with a sort of sense of shame. And then it's, in a sense, that's what you've sort of been working with and fighting with and dealing with for these many years.
Ignoring for like 17 years and pretending it's not there. And then marrying a man who was basically, he may as well have been raised in the cult. He was one of those malignant males. And when that marriage ended, suddenly realizing, hang on, it's because I haven't healed those wounds, you know. And I was 49 years old last year. I've just turned 50. And yes, thank you. Happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday.
And when I first kind of got the idea that I first understood what personal boundaries were. My personal boundaries were demolished at the age of 9, and I did not know it. And it affected all my relationships, but especially my relationships with men. And sometimes I just want to go back to 20-year-old me and shake myself and say, go for therapy. But you know, you got to live you do the best you can. You do the best you can. Yeah.
So you'd say that the therapeutic process helped a lot.
Oh, enormously. I cannot recommend it highly enough. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for my therapist. Yeah, because in May 2019, I didn't want to live anymore. No, not that I didn't want to live anymore. I didn't know how to live anymore. And I actually thought I might kill myself, and I didn't, for various reasons, which I write about in the book. But if it wasn't for my therapist, I wouldn't be here. And if it wasn't for my friends, I wouldn't be here. And if it wasn't for my brother and my uncles and my aunts, I wouldn't be here. So big shout out to them. Yeah.
Yes, you tell in the book lovely stories about your aunt who helped you a great deal, your uncle and aunt.
And Chris and
Aunt Alice and Chris and your brother, of course, who stood by you. And I thought those were, it's very moving and very encouraging in terms of what you had been through and the way that your family was split, the way that your mother and your sister, stayed there and basically submitted to this regime, and sort of condemned you and demonized you because you'd found a way out. But there were family members and there were people who were able to help you and were able to help you get out of there and help you get on the, get into some kind of recovery and work towards some kind of healing. So I think that's an important part of the story to tell. And I think that was a very interesting part of it for the book because, family relationships can be so difficult. Family relationships is often, all sorts of fractures that arise and people's, personality clashes, all sorts of things. And it's nice to know that there were people that, that were able to give you that assistance and that hopefully by what you've done and by telling your story, that other people will reach out in some way to find that assistance to get out of that sort of a situation.
Yes.
And also that, that attention will be turned now to the people who are at KwaSizabantu now and the people who are living there, because there are any number of children who are there.
And still being born. Yeah.
And what is happening to them? I mean, one's got to ask those questions because...
Well, I can tell you, their spirits are being broken by the age of 3.
Well, it's shocking. I mean, it shouldn't, that whole situation has to come to an end. It really does. Yeah. And I mean, I certainly would support it, whatever actions you would take to and as one of the, someone asked in a question, what do you think it would take to stop the abusive practices at KwaSizabantu? I mean, we've been talking that this person says, aren't the leaders there persuadable?
No.
It would appear not, because this has been going on for a very long time.
So the director of the school board, right, and he's also a director of Ekwele, is a man called Michael Ngubane. I witnessed Michael Ngubane with these 2 eyes, who were much younger then, beating children until they bled, right? He acknowledged in the spurious report that they paid 2 lawyers to write. He acknowledged that he sometimes took it a bit far. Sometimes, hundreds of times, hundreds of children, they still have physical scars on their backs, buttocks, and thighs from his beatings. He is a member of the school board, and Ekwele, and nobody gives a damn. Nobody. Where's the Department of Education? Where are all these retailers stocking Ekwele? Like, where's your humanity?
And that's something we spoke about briefly when we chatted, was that, after the initial revelations, a lot of the retailers and stopped, Woolworths and so forth, stopped stocking the water and stopped buying vegetables from KwaSizabantu. But that after the report, this report that they, got these lawyers to write, basically saying, that's not so bad, it's fine, a couple of things went wrong, but basically it's a great place. That those people are, those companies and the, Spar and Woolworths and so forth are once again stocking those products.
Yeah. So I had a chat this week with someone from one of those retailers, and I was told I'm not allowed to record and I'm not allowed to quote them. But what came out from our chat was that they feel these two lawyers' reports exonerates KwaSizabantu, and that until the CRL Rights Commission brings out their report or some legal action is taken, they don't feel justified. So I just told him he's on the wrong side of history and he'll remember this conversation one day. But look, they succeeded with, and I regret participating in that report. I did it against my better judgment, and we live and learn. But I just want the directors of the retailers to go and read the reports in Exodus, go and listen to it, go and watch it. And in the chat box, they've got the special projects, the link to all the Exodus things. Yes. And I just want them, and then I just want to ask them, where's your humanity? That's all I want to ask them is, where's your humanity? I don't care about legally proving. There are too many of us. We're not making it up. We're not sucking it out of our thumbs. If I was the only one, then but just go and do some research, people. Do some research. And then ask yourself, where is your humanity? And how do you think it feels for us to walk into your store and see those products on the shelves? Just think about that. Yeah.
And also maybe that's something that we as consumers, and something that, that in a bit of a noise could be made in those people, because we do at least have, whatever the legal processes are, we do have that power, as you call a conscious consumer, to be aware of that.
Yeah.
And that's maybe something
buying it. They'd have to stop. They'd have to stop stocking it, because people just wouldn't be taking it off the shelves. It doesn't taste that nice anyway. No.
Well, it sounds to me like it tastes of fear.
Yes, and blood. Children's blood. Yeah. Sorry, I'm dramatic.
Okay, no, that's okay. Well, I think that's an appropriately dramatic moment on which to start wrapping up. I'm pleased to see that there are a number of messages in the chat. People saying, proud of you. You're an inspiration. Your journey is inspiring, and I'm sure will be inspiring to many people who've gone through similar experiences, or also, troubling life stories that take time to sort of deal with and to recover. So I want to say thank you very much to you, Erika, for talking to me and for telling that story, and to say thank you very much to the people who have listened in and who've watched us, hearing about that, and it's really great to be able to do this. And thanks to News 24. You will see, if you go to News 24, if you're interested in following up on any of those links to Exodus and so forth, that would be great.
And I know we're out of time, but I have not thanked the amazing people at Penguin, Marlene and Bronwyn and Runel and, Shaun and Ian and everybody. It's like amazing. And Shaun, to you, thank you for having me as your first book launch in your amazing new job, and congratulations on your new position.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. Great to talk to you. This is the book, people, Mission of Malice. Have a look at it if you're interested. It's a moving book. It's easier to read than you might imagine. Yeah. And very interesting experience. So thank you very much to everyone. Thank you, Erika. Great to talk to you.
And my kitty cats are right here with me, but they're a bit shy. So anyway, they might co-authors.
Give them a stroke from us.
I will.
Thank you,
everybody.
Okay.
Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks very much. Okay.
Bye-bye.